Blog Talk Radio.
Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And in the presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I see aspiring to be free. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. And I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Within and without, above and below, yeah. East, west, north and south, I sense your presence. Without and within, below and above, yeah, yeah. East, west, north and south, I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Presence of my Lord of light and love, everything I find in tune with the divine. And here we stand in line, waiting for some sacred sign. But to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. And I am the light within your soul. In the essence of truth and right, love makes the circle whole. And when I call to thee, and come on bended knee, surrender to the all-pervading light and love. Reflections of the one surrounding me with love. For to find the balance is the purpose of this time. To restore the balance of the universal mind. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, Holy Way of the Most High. Om Shabbat sense your presence. Om Shabbat Shalom, holy angel of the Most High. Om Shabbat Shalom, I sense your presence. I sense your presence.
Thank you for joining me here on Activating Compassion Radio. My name is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I'm your hostess. The music you were just listening to at the beginning of the show is I Sense Your Presence, and that's by Shemshai, a wonderful group which I originally met in the Sedona, Arizona area, now traveling the world and following their dream. And, you know, they put out a lot of music since I've met them, and I do encourage you to go ahead and check out their work if you have the opportunity. You can check it out on their website, www.shemshai.com. That's SHIMSHAI.com. And I just want to extend a welcome to everybody that's joining us here today, whether you listened to the show before and you enjoy it and you're returning to see what we have going on this week, or if you're listening for the very first time. We do stream live in 3 additional places: TalkStream Live, StreamFinder, and Penn, also known as Care Encounters Network, and I welcome everyone listening through there as well. Here at Activating Compassion Radio, I look at the different ways that compassion exists in our lives. How do we move our blocks, resistances, frustrations, and more? And some weeks I'm discussing different aspects of how compassion's in our life, how it affects our life, and the different areas of compassion. Some weeks I'm also doing more exercises, practical implementation. We had Lorraine Cohen on the show last week or a couple of weeks ago, and she did a great process for us, and that was really wonderful. So check that out if you missed that. You can catch the archived versions of those. And then also I've got, many guests on the show a lot of times. Tonight's no exception to that with Linda Diffenbach-Barrett, and also musical artists that I bring on. Last year I had Stephen Halpern, Peter Cater, both Grammy nominees on the show. And I've also had Joe Matson, Claire Hedin, Bruce Chicarelli, Craig Corollas, and Harold Ramstaff-Moses, all doing a variety of different things with music and compassionate work. Now, in my own work, what I do is focus on helping people find and use compassion in their everyday lives. I've created the Genesis Clearing Statement, and you can learn more about that at my website, JessieAnnNicholsGeorge1.com. And I've also authored 4 books, the most recent being You, Me, Life Streams, and its companion workbook. And then my first 2 books, Activating Compassion and that companion workbook as well. In addition, I've created the Compassion Tour, which is a multi-state nationwide tour that includes workshops, retreats, seminars, book signings, fundraising events, healing, earth healing along the way, doing lots of things with that. And I'm actually just still finishing up the 2014 tour right now. I'm actually broadcasting from a little town in the very southeast part of Texas, which is in the Beaumont, Port Arthur area. And so that's really kind of a fun little spot to have just crossed over into Texas today with the tour and headed into San Antonio. So if anybody's around the San Antonio area, come by and at least say hi to me. Going to just go on my website and you'll find where the events are that I'm doing there. I've got a Scott Song event coming up this week. I'll be available for private sessions this week. So definitely come by and check it out and see what's going on. And you can follow all the events or additional events like my full day event, which will be a week from tomorrow in the San Antonio area, through also my event site, JessieAnnNicholsGeorge.eventbrite.com. There's still time to sign up for that if you'd like to jump in and do some incredible life transitioning, shifting work that's going on, what you're trying to manifest or release. And if you enjoy the show today, I also want to remind you to go ahead and share it with people, because I know when I'm sharing the show with people, there's always something in the show that is really important for one of my contacts. And whether that's social media or family, there's bound to be somebody who's going to get a very positive impact out of what we're sharing on the show here. And they can just use the same link that you use to get into the live show, listen to it at their convenience. And to find those links, they can go to my page on the Main Street Universe tab of my website. Again, that's JessieAnnNicholsGeorge1.com. And, hey, if they don't want to listen to it through Blog Talk, they can also catch it as a podcast at iTunes and TuneIn.com And in about 1 to 2 weeks, it'll be up on my YouTube channel as well. Now, before we get started on everything, what I'd like to do is open into a little book called The 72 Names of God. It's by Yehuda Berg, who is a Kabbalah master. And I always like to grab a little insight for a week, and this also goes up on my page of the Main Street Universe tab on my website, so you can go back and reflect on it throughout the week. And I just kind of like to grab a little message to give us a little something to get our mind flowing, so to say. Now, the name of God that we have, and of course, Yehuda takes the big concepts, puts them into everyday language, which is why I like Yehuda's work. And the common name for God that he's got for us today is called circuitry. And with this, the initial message on this is actually a dictionary entry known as black hole. And this is listed as a noun. And one, a cosmological phenomenon with a gravitational field so strong that even light cannot escape from it. Two, something resembling a black hole, as something that consumes a resource continually, a financial black hole. Very interesting perspectives when we're bringing in and talking about circuitry. Now, the insight he gives on this is constant desire to receive for the self alone creates a bottomless pit, a black hole that eventually leaves us in darkness. The dark side of our nature tells us that we're doing others a favor when we share. Our ego makes us oblivious to the fact that we receive when we give to others. We can greedily and selfishly grab for all that life offers, or we can appreciate what we receive and share a portion of it with others. Receiving for the sake of sharing creates a circuitry, a constant flow of good fortune in our lives. The secret behind sharing is found inside the numerical value of this particular name of God, which is 118, the exact same numerical value of the Hebrew word for will take. When we share, we are actually taking and receiving blessings in return. But if we share with a consciousness of giving something up or doing someone a favor, the circuitry is broken. Like light trapped in a black hole, the blessings that should have been ours are unable to reach us. And this is a really big part, and this is where a lot of people struggle with laws of abundance and things like that they have going on. And it's very interesting because I was just having a conversation about selfishness a couple of days ago with a friend of mine. And, he's talking about, Jesse, you got to get more selfish. And this is exactly what he was talking about, in that too oftentimes light workers and people starting on their spiritual path, they give and they give and they give and they give. And they receive things only in order to do somebody a favor, or they're constantly giving things up. And we actually do need to get a little more selfish in our lives, and it's actually a theme that I'm going to be working with a lot more in the upcoming year, which you'll find out about more soon. But we have to be willing to take, being willing to receive for the sake of sharing. So that means that we have to receive first, and then we share a part of it. So many people, their ego gets in the way and says, oh, let me share 90, 80, 70%. And really there's a reason that the kind of 10% realm came about in there. And that's so that we always have enough to share. We always have enough coming through. We always have room to keep receiving. And the sharing part allows us to keep that door open so that we can keep receiving in there. And it keeps the circuits open, so to say. You want those good connections in your life. And the meditation, by the way, that Yehuda gives on this is, this name helps you to receive when you share and share when you receive. You see the opportunity that sharing gives, and you are aware that when you receive with the right consciousness, you are also sharing. This is the circuitry of life. Connect to it, and you move out of the black hole and into the light. So if you're feeling like you've been in that black hole, this is definitely one you want to be working with here. Now, the formal name of God that goes with this is Chet Ayin Mem. Again, that's Chet Ayin Mem, and the common name is circuitry. So definitely take a look at that. Feel free to go back and look at that over the week. And now just to give us a little lead into our topic today and what we're going to be talking about with our guest, Linda, and we'll just kind of get a little thought going here before we go on break. Have we really considered the various components of the sacred feminine? And is it possible for some that this is going to be a very traumatic shift? Where's the masculine place in all of this? As I got ready to write my post this week, the thought came to me that embracing the sacred feminine energy may not be an easy or completely pleasant process for everyone. For many, both men and women, there are likely to be fears involved. We already know that any change can bring a sense of trauma, even when we feel that it will be good for us. As we shift from a patriarchal society back to a matriarchal society, it is very natural for the masculine energy to experience fear. There is concern if the patterns that have alternated back and forth with control will continue. This includes such things as disrespect, abuse, exercising power and control. For me, part of the whole key in this is to create experiences based on higher vibration, compassion, and conditional love, and so on. It is also important to remember that there is a sense of trauma for those that are not in control or power. Being conscious enough to shift the dynamic to perhaps a stronger balance, or having the masculine and feminine co-create, may be part of the keys as the sacred feminine surfaces. For the masculine, this is likely to be a great opportunity for them to balance their energy, and for the feminine, a great opportunity to embrace their core aspects. Linda Diffenbach focuses her work on all of these aspects. She embraces the participation of men at Goddess or Sacred Feminine events. She has come to realize the importance of having options for men to participate in these events and helping them understand there's nothing to fear in this process and that it does not have to be something traumatic to embrace the sacred feminine. Where I consider these aspects, it is similar to information that I've shared in my relationship. This is that we need to honor our own energy, masculine or feminine, and our individual selves. But we also need to honor our connections and embracing our polarity energy for what it is and the value it has in our life. Perhaps the real key is to stand in sacred space, honoring our whole self. What are you noticing with the increase of the sacred feminine? Do you feel the masculine should be a part of this process? What do you see as being important as the sacred feminine surfaces? This week, our guest focuses on a component of compassion that's related to the aspect in my book of creating a new world. And this reminds us that we have the power to create the world that we choose, to break the patterns of the past, and to be in a world of harmony and balance. I'm going to be taking a short break, and when we return, I will have Linda Diffenbach, and we will be discussing her work in Goddess Energy, the Sacred Feminine, and Traumatic Wounding. The song I've got for you during our break is called Nothing Stays the Same. It's by Claire Hedin. And certainly, if you would like to find out more about Claire's work, you can do so through her website, which is www.clairehedin.com. That's CLAREHEDIN.com. We'll be back in just a few minutes.
You just walked into my life, unexpectedly you called, catching us both by surprise. Neither of us knew that this would happen, and this is the miracle of love. So do you plan to stay after this first moment? Do you plan to stay after this first time? I want you to love me in person, the way that you have loved me in your mind. So do you plan to stay after this first moment? And do you plan to stay after this first time? I want you to love me in person, the way that you have loved me in your mind.
Welcome back, and you are listening to Activating Compassion Radio, and my name is Jessie M. Nichols George, and I'm your hostess today. You were just listening to a song by Claire Hedin called Nothing Stays the Same. And you can definitely check out more of Claire's work at www.clairehedin.com. That's CLAREHEDIN.com. And I'd like to bring on my guest today, Linda Diffenbach, founder of the Autumn Goddess Retreat Festival, an annual fundraising event for the Domestic Violence Center of Chester County in Pennsylvania. And she focuses on building community and honoring our inner goddess. Linda began her healing work in 2002 and continues to expand her knowledge, expertise, and experience. She has certifications in chakra clearing with applied integration, Usui Reiki Master Teacher, Shambhala Multidimensional Healing, Life Coaching, Bachelor in Social Work, Ordination to the Order of Melchizedek, Angel Reading, Divine Connection Attunement, Divine Mother's Heart Healing, and Monet Key Rights. The core of Linda's work is to facilitate deep inner transformation through identifying and clearing core issues within the consciousness. We're discussing her work today with the goddess energy, the sacred feminine, and how men fit into that, and her work in healing trauma. You can learn more about Linda's work at www.wellnessinharmony.com and also www.autumngoddessretreat.com. And I'm going to go ahead and get her mic opened up here. And Linda, welcome to Activating Compassion Radio.
Hi, Jessie. Thank you so much for having me today. It's great to be here. Thank you.
It's a pleasure. I had that opportunity to connect with you in person while I was in Pennsylvania, and it's just such a gift. It really was just the time that I had and that I shared with you was a real blessing, and you're doing so many incredible things. It's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
I would love to have you start off with sharing a little bit about, who's Linda and how did you get into all this? Because you have a pretty long list of certifications in different things.
Mhm. Well, I really started this journey as a personal journey, and really trying to find ways to help heal my own experiences of trauma, and trying to find ways to, trying to find something that would tell me that I wasn't crazy. Growing up, I experienced some pretty significant traumas and didn't really have a lot of support and didn't have a lot of systems that helped me. In many cases, they actually just reinforced the experiences that I had, to the point where I went into this complete and utter negation of my experiences. And, it was all very, very crazy-making and very overwhelming, and everything that I kept going to in the traditional, American therapies and services were just not serving me. And I got to a point where I was desperate to know that I was really okay, because I didn't know that. And I first stumbled into, well, actually before this, through my work in human services, I had some opportunities to connect with some Native American medicine chiefs and learn and be able to practice some of their ceremony and ritual, which was powerful, extremely powerful for me. So that was part of my opening into alternative, more holistic, more spiritual realms of connection. And then I was introduced to Reiki, and that opened me even further, and I found that to be a wonderful tool to learn to care for myself. And it was so gentle, and it was very supportive. And at the time, I was going to school full time. I was working pretty much full time. So having something like that, having Reiki as a tool to help support me through that was huge. So that's where I started. And then after I graduated college, I took a meditation class with a woman by the name of Elizabeth Frediani, who is a phenomenal healer and teacher and mentor. And I started studying with her, but more importantly, I went to her for private sessions. And the amount of progress and transformation and healing that took place just in beginning to work with her was astounding. And her work was very powerful. It was very validating. And I was kind of, I'm not even jokingly saying this, but I kind of say it jokingly that, it was like experiencing 3 years worth of intensive therapy in just a couple of sessions. That's how profound of an experience I had working with her. And it was such a wonderful gift. Of course, I wanted to learn it right away. And from there, I went on and trained with her I continued to train with her, but my initial training was about 2.5 years. And learning her process called chakra clearing with applied integration. And the whole training process in and of itself, too, was powerfully healing for me, but also gave me this amazing tool to be able to share with the world, to share with my community. So, and then there's other things that I've added in and learned along the way to help build, but that was really my foundation. And, that's where my heart is, and it is in that work.
It's an amazing journey. I always find it interesting what leads us to one to another. And, you brought up something, and that was that you had somebody who influenced your life in a way, you said, that was like getting 3 years of therapy and a couple of sessions. And I think that when we're really ready to move on our path, it almost always seems like there's somebody that shows up in our life like that puts those pieces together, that creates the ahas for us. And and it's funny, it's one of the things that I've noticed on my tour is that a lot of people have said, you just gave me the aha, along the way, and in one session. And I think that that's an exciting place to be on. When we hit that part, when we find that person to work with, that it just really shapes the whole structure. It's like everything just starts to flow from there.
Yeah.
Is my experience with that.
Yeah,
So,
and that was, yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I would say that was definitely my experience with Elizabeth and her work, because it was such a profound shift that she facilitated for me, and it was so eye-opening. Because, as I said, there was so much negation in my life and my experiences, and it felt to me like she was the first person who came along in my life who really looked at me, saw me completely for who I was without any judgment, but very, very clearly saw me and, saw my experiences and said, this was real and it mattered. And how you feel and what you experienced matters. And that is probably one of the most powerful things you can do for a person, is to let them know, to validate them and see them and acknowledge them. And I had so little of that at that level that that alone, in addition to the processes and the tools and everything, that alone was such an amazing shift for me. Because, as I said, I realized that I wasn't crazy. There was a reason why I was feeling the way that I was feeling, and things were happening and had happened, and there was a whole, it was like my story unraveled in front of me, and made sense to me finally. So it was very, very powerful to have her show up.
And I think when we get that, it's that sense of finally realizing, like you say, not only are we not crazy, but we're not alone.
Yeah.
Somebody else has a connection to this as well. And what you described that beautifully, because what you described with Elizabeth, that seeing clearly without the judgment and helping you to realize that, yes, what's going on for you is a real thing, is really happening. I feel like this is a mark of a true guide in our life. This is a mark of a true so-called teacher that's there to really help us. And so when people are wondering, am I with a real teacher, this is a very good indicator, is if they're coming at it from this space that she came at it with you. Because I get a lot of people that are always wondering, how do I know, did I get the right teacher or things like that? This is a way. They're coming at you without judgment of what's happening in your life. So
and their focus is, and their focus is on you, and serving you and supporting you and being present with you. And I'm not talking about, they're focused on fixing you, or, because there's a recognition in, with somebody like her that there's, we're not broken, but she's able to see me clearly and see anyone that she works with, and she's totally present. And that complete presence and that keen ability to listen and tune in and be 100% there for you makes a huge difference. They're not in their own agenda. She's not in her own agenda, and that makes a difference in a healer.
Very much so. I so agree on that. We've got a few things we want to kind of chat about here on this show that we're delving into today. So let's start off with talking about, because, we've got all these shifts and changes, and one of the things that's going to be happening as the Saturn or the Pluto-Uranus squares finish up in February is where we start moving more fully into the matriarchal rule again. And that means a lot more work with the sacred feminine and the goddess energy. So, what is working with goddess energy all about? Because I think a lot of people throw that term around, but they don't really know always what that is.
Well, and I think it's very personal for all of us. It may be very different, but for me, reconnecting with Goddess and reconnecting with that divine, sacred, feminine essence is a part of coming home and back into myself. A part of being able to recognize myself as a woman, as being part of the divine, and being able to honor that and celebrate that and embrace that and move through life in a dance with that energy. And it's also, in connecting with that sacred feminine energy, it's also, as you mentioned in the blog, there's also the balance of connecting with the masculine. I really think more of what we're moving into, and this is completely my own opinion and perhaps my own hope, but it's more of moving into the time of the sacred marriage. You know, we've spent thousands and thousands of years where women have been oppressed through patriarchal society, where women have been victimized, and, you know, even today there's horrendous amount of victimization that occurs against women in America as well as around the globe. And as those things happen, it does a tremendous amount of damage to both. You know, so, you know, the men are being wounded by this cycle and the women are being wounded by this cycle. It's not us against them, you know, but in coming back into balance with the sacred feminine and coming back into honoring the sacred feminine, we also can begin to honor the sacred that is within men as well, and be able to heal all of the wounding that was created over these millennia of separation and duality. So for me, it's really a big part of healing. You know, there has to be a recognition of the trauma that's been experienced collectively and individually in all of us, but there also has to be a recognition, a healing of that trauma, but also a letting go of blame. And
you know, these are some really big points that you're making here, and I kind of want to jump in for a moment, because we have been under this cycle, and actually the awareness is being brought out, I would say, more and more, where we're being forced to recognize the trauma. And it's very interesting. That is part of this series of the Pluto-Uranus squares that are going on, which we just went through the 6th to the 7th of them. And it really has been about trying to oppress women, trying to keep this control in there, which is ironic because they can't do anything to actually repress it. It's going to happen regardless. But what it has done is made us aware of a lot of these hidden abuses and wounding, as you say, that's gone on. And it really is about a balancing. When I put the post out this week on the blog post on this topic, it was very interesting. I got a very good description that I felt like, yeah, this is something we need to keep in mind. This process, we have now more than ever the ability to balance the cycle and to stop the vicious extremes, so to say, in this, the vicious attacks, the vicious victimization in it. And in this process of that, we're really like a yin and a yang. You can't be in the masculine energy without having some feminine in you, and you can't be in the feminine energy without having some masculine energy in you. And that, I think, is also where we're headed, is for that kind of a balance to happen, is like the yin and the yang.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, evidenced over, I mean, just looking at the past century and a half, there's been a lot of evidence of that happening throughout the world. You know, I mean, one thing that comes to mind, you know, when we're oppressing the feminine and we're violating women and children, and we are making being female wrong, it's, as I said, it's not just the women that are affected by that, because then that expression in the men is not allowed either. So they are not able to connect with that vital essence that is already part of them, and they have to abandon part of themselves because it's just not allowed. And then, of course, the women are not allowed. So there's a whole huge amount of pain that comes out of that for everyone. And, you know, as women are, you know, over the last century have been stepping out and really fighting for their rights and fighting for their place in the world and to be recognized. You know, we're certainly a force of nature, but we've also kind of swung on the pendulum in many ways into more of the masculine within us in order to try to get that hold and be able to get a hold of those freedoms and those rights. And now it's swinging back, you know, because there's been a lot of compromise that we've experienced by stepping, you know, trying to move through the world in masculine energy, which isn't entirely, you know, in a way that it's just not balanced. You know, that's not what we primarily hold. So, you know, there's been a lot of problems on that end too, even though a lot of really wonderful things have also come out of that movement. So now I feel like it's the pendulum swinging back into more of a place of balance, and we have a long way to go. But we are starting to recognize that we really need to embrace that piece of us, and that's why so many people are starting to step out and wanting to connect with goddess energy and form goddess circles and you know, moving into that energy, because we miss it, you know, and it's like this void within us that we don't even necessarily understand or recognize what it is. It's just this longing. So when we have something, you know, a goddess circle, a women's circle, some kind of a connection come before us, it's like, wow, this is what I've been missing. Where have you been all my life, you know?
Well, and it's funny because one can't really work without the other. I had a very wise man respond to my post in one of my groups that said, you know, if we were smart, we would just turn it over and let the women run it because they have it so much better. And the masculine mentality is what is behind all of the issues in society, you know, our competition, our, you know, fighting or this and that. And there's a place for each energy, of course, in there. And you made a point, men can't express without women. And what's interesting about that is without the feminine energy, if that gets suppressed, the masculine can't exist either.
Right.
Because its nature is to protect. Its nature is to provide. Its nature is to be active. And if it suppresses the feminine, it has nothing left to protect. It's not protecting anymore. It has no role. And the masculine without a role is lost completely. And then what does it have to have? It has to go back and search for the feminine. You know, the feminine is what actually gives it the ability to create and be active. So, you know, they're really just so hand in hand of things. And, you know, I've got somebody asking in the chat room what your definition of being female is. And what about establishing equality between women and men? Do you have some thoughts on that?
Say that last part again. It's about establishing equality
between women and men.
So they're asking, what about establishing equality between women and men?
What about it? Do you have some thoughts on how that might be done, or how we might be able to come to more of a balance there?
Well, I think it is essential for us to come into balance. As that's an essential part of our healing process, is to be able to heal the wounded feminine and the wounded masculine within all of us, you know. And that's where we can come into more of a level of equal standing and connection and balance between the two. And, going back to your statement from your friend about, the women running the corporations, I would kind of disagree with that. I think that not that we don't have a lot to offer, but I don't think that taking the men out of it is a good idea either, because the masculine energy is essential in running a business, in the structure and the competitive, and I don't mean like aggressive or violent competitive, but the competitive edge that they bring and that protective edge and the motivation that men bring into that's essential. And then, the women bring a different energy into it, and we bring in the cooperative energy, and we bring in the collaboration into that. And all of those, if they're working harmoniously, then that's where you get a very powerful business model. But if you have it all feminine or all masculine, it's out of balance. So,
and you bring up a good point there, that there is perhaps a place for competition, maybe not in the space of ego and that, as much as using competition to stimulate progression and to continue to evolve.
Yeah, I think competition can be a very healthy thing. And it's part of our nature, Competition is extremely healthy when it's used in the right way. As you said, it helps us to progress. If I have, it helps us to strive to become better at who we are and what we do. It's absolutely a healthy thing in its highest expression. When it becomes, when it's coming from that sense of lack and woundedness, that's where it becomes problematic. But it's essential. And yes, there's the balance between the masculine and feminine is where we are healthier. So there is a sense of equality, there is a sense of balance, there is a sense of harmony, and there's a sense of wholeness, and that's a really key piece. I am able to be all of who I am as a woman, in the expression of myself and the feminine aspects of myself and the masculine aspects of myself. And it's okay. And the men are also able to fully express all of who they are, the masculine and feminine aspects of themselves, and then they also are coming from a place of wholeness and completeness, and so that takes, that's very healing and very powerful to come from that place.
Would you say then perhaps a big step in this direction to creating this balance and the wholeness would relate to being able to value the other, so and to value both aspects?
Oh, absolutely. I think one of the challenges in this dance that we've been going through is that it's very easy for people to get into the blame game and the shaming and the the victim mode, and it's all the men's fault and that type of mentality, and that's not doing anybody any good. But it's really honoring all of us and recognizing all of us. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, and I think that is a huge thing is that you just mentioned right there, is that it really is. It's about honoring. It's like looking at the men and saying there's a place for all that activity and all of that energy and that logical thinking, because that helps us put some of the other desires together in that. There's a place for the nurturing. If we just have an idea, we don't nurture that idea, which is what the feminine energy does, then we can't, it's not going to go anywhere. It's just going to be an idea, so to say. So it's, I think, really this alternating back and forth. It's this, it's shifting back and forth, and when we learn to do that, and we go ahead and we take action, and then we're able to receive, and these are all pieces of the energies alternating kind of back and forth and helping each other. I think once we get a little more focused maybe on a common place or space or direction, we can do that.
Well, and like I said, in the celebration of the sacred feminine, I speak a lot and work a lot with the sacred feminine. However, part of that, in doing that, I'm not separating out the sacred masculine from that. Because again, you can't have one without the other. There's no balance without it. And the masculine energy is part of all of us. And even there are women who tend to, just by their nature, have much more of a masculine expression, just as there are men who by their nature have more of a feminine expression of who they are, and vice versa. But in coming back into that recognition and acceptance of the sacred feminine, it allows us to come back into that recognition of the sacred masculine, and again, honoring the wholeness, honoring those. It's a vital piece. One of the things that I love about, and this isn't a direct correlation, but it does really reflect on this in my mind. One of the things I love about J.K. Rowling is how insightful she is in her, in like the Harry Potter books, and the piece where she's talking about what happens when you murder someone, and that it actually tears away a piece of your soul. You lose a part of yourself. And that's true when with any act of violence against another, whether it's against ourselves or another person. It wounds us as well. So if I'm lashing out at you, then I'm equally causing harm to myself. So in this dance, it's stepping away from that violence and moving into a place where we can love and honor and respect each other and heal those wounds, again, on both sides of the fence. I get I'm very particular about not being exclusionary of men in the work that I do. I mean, there's some things where we have to be coming together just in circles of women, and there's times when the men have to be coming together just in circles of men as part of their healing process. But there's also a time where we must come together, because that's where the real healing happens.
Yeah, and I'm really glad that you brought that up, because there are a lot of people who will not accept men into their events, and it was something that was kind of stirred some different opinions with my post as well when I was bringing up this subject during the week. And there were some people that said absolutely not, men should not be allowed at these events. But I'm thinking, but how are they ever going to learn if they don't get some level of participation in this? A man cannot provide a woman's perspective and vice versa. And I do, like yourself, I believe very strongly that there are things and times that, we each need our own space, our own energy to connect with. That's very important. That's like keeping connected with ourselves. If we're going to be in a relationship, we need to also take time for ourselves and be with ourselves and have that connection to ourselves. But then we also need to be able to connect with the other person. In there, I'm very pro that thing, each have your own activities to do, but then have those things you do together as well, because that's a great, again, learning platform to understand where the other person's coming from or how the other energy works in there. So I'm so glad that you're doing that, really. And I know that not along the way, I've heard different men say that being able to participate in a goddess event or in a sacred feminine event has been life-changing in a very positive way for them. And I've had even some men that have come through and said, oh, my gosh, I have gone from being a total jerk to having a lot of respect for women. So I know there's some really dramatic results coming from that. And I don't think that we get to the balance part if we don't include them. It's been the exclusion that has, or total exclusion, that has created some of the separation. I think.
What's interesting is the woman who did the red tent at the Goddess Festival this year, she was telling me that within the red tent movement, one of the things that is starting to happen is they're also including a pink tent, which the pink tent is a section that the men are allowed into. So the women, of course, only go into the red tent, and that's a very sacred space that's just for the women. But men who want to learn and get information can come into the pink part of the tent. And she equated it to, we allow men to enter into the vagina, they just can't get into the womb, is the way she said it, which, is exactly right. But men are hungry for that connection and, wanting to be held and received by women, and right now they feel so excluded. When I first started doing the Goddess Festival, I had tons of men coming up and say, are we allowed? We really would love to come and be a part of this. Are we allowed? And, of course, because of the way this festival is set up, absolutely they were allowed. And I've gotten some wonderful feedback and appreciation from the men for, expressed to all of the women there who invited them in and allowed them to be a part of it. There was tremendous healing that they said, came from that.
And I want to mention to people, when you mentioned entering into the vagina and the womb, that wasn't a literal thing. That's a metaphorical process.
That's metaphorical, because the red tent represents the womb.
Yeah.
No.
So
it's not a sexual event, but the red tent,
And
so, yes, it's
I
not
was going to have you also define the red tent. I know of somebody in Colorado that is doing those events, and it's a very, very powerful thing. So maybe you can share a little bit, because I don't think a lot of people are familiar with the red tent.
Okay. Well, the red tent the movement came out of a book that was written by Anita Diamond, and it was a story that's written based in pre-biblical times or early biblical times about a woman named Dinah who she was daughter of Jacob, I think. But she, her father had many, many wives and, was part of a tribe. And she was the only daughter in this clan. And every month at the new moon, the women, their cycles were synchronized, and the women all would go into a red tent for 3 days. And during that time of their menses, they would spend this sacred time together, and there was ritual, and there was connection, and there was ceremony around, around their bodies. And so from that book kind of sprung this whole movement across the country, probably across the globe, of red tents, women creating sacred space for us to come together and really connect deeply and intimately about our bodies and our sexuality and our reproductive experience and everything. So it's a place for us to connect into those deeper places where we don't for many of us, that's an area that hasn't been honored for us. So it's a sacred space, and the tent represents the womb. thus the earlier statement. So it represents entering into the womb and creating space, sacred space that only the women can come into together, and honoring ourselves as mothers and as women.
It's really a beautiful process, and the person that I know that does this in Colorado, she's doing a lot of work with like high school girls and girls as they're starting into their cycles of things, and the results have been really phenomenal. It's really made that transition into womanhood a little easier for them. It's given them a sort of sense of support that they haven't had in the past with things, which has been very, very important because it's a very confusing time. I mean, I can't speak for men exactly, but I know for women, at least when I was going through things, in my younger years, that it was just kind of like, well, here's a movie and here's what's happening, and there was no honoring that went on at all in that process. And so to feel like you can honor it and to feel like it is part of a natural cycle of life, and to feel like this is part of who you are, this is part of, what you've incarnated as. And I know there's also in the Native American traditions, there's some parallel types of things for men as well, where the men have their time together in a similar way, embracing the masculine energy thing. One of the things you were bringing up and mentioning about, Wendo, is healing the wounded masculine and the feminine. Maybe you can give us some insights here on how do we know when that's wounded? What are some of the ways that show that it's wounded, and how does that come out in society?
How does the woundedness come out?
Yeah, how does that show? What signs would indicate to us that the masculine or the feminine has been wounded?
In a personal expression, specifically?
However you want.
Or are you looking? Well, I mean, because you can look at it from like a global expression, and you can look at the rate of violence against women around the world. Like statistically, every 9 seconds in the U.S., there's a woman who's being assaulted or beaten. That's a very overt expression of woundedness in both the masculine and feminine. The frequency of rapes in the country, the issues of sex trafficking, and, women and children in this country that are being forced into slavery. And those are all very, very big, very real issues that are expressions of the woundedness within the masculine and feminine. So they're alone, as well as just the conflict in between men and women, and for us, our relationships with ourselves. How do we view our bodies? How do we view, our monthly cycles? Do we really care for ourselves? I love that you actually opened this in talking about receiving, and the ability to receive. That is also a expression of woundedness and our inability to receive, because part of the feminine energy is in receptivity and nurturing and, caring for. And in caring for, it means caring for self as well as other. And receptivity is something that's so very hard for so many of us. It's very hard for us to receive gifts. It's hard for us to receive compliments. It's hard for us to receive love. It's hard for us to be selfish. We've got it kind of drilled into us that we can't be selfish. And, being selfish is a beautiful thing. And it's not about taking away from others. It's about giving to ourselves. So all of those things are just some examples of expressions of that.
I think that's very, it provides a great insight in there. And I think what was interesting was, as you were talking, it wasn't that it was just one or the other that becomes wounded. We see it in these different acts, but it's both that are simultaneously wounded, just as we were mentioning earlier with the yin-yang aspect there. One can't be wounded without the other being wounded. We're actually even seeing some of the turnings of tables here, which I don't know if you've heard about the Black Widow murders that have been going on that they haven't traced down. It's a woman who murdered her husband originally, and then she's gone around and she's been sleeping with men and then killing them. And you want to talk about a lot of wounding that is, a lot of wounded energy there. That is definitely it. And I feel like that's an example of partly what men are afraid of, or the masculine energy is afraid of, with the feminine taking over and coming into rule. It's afraid that it's going to, take that revenge, so to say, in there. And I guess in essence, maybe as a summary, it's kind of an aspect of when we're in the distortion, our masculine and feminine is wounded versus living in our virtues.
Well, and I think a lot of men feel, whether overtly or not, they feel that there's a sense of being judged and being abandoned and being pushed away, and they feel a sense of anger towards them, coming from women, and they're afraid of that too, and certainly including a lot of men who don't, have never done anything, but they feel like it's as we're exploring this dance, they feel like there's a lot of angst coming at them, and people do certainly get into the blame game, and everything's it's all their fault, and pointing fingers and all of that, and so that's very threatening. If you've ever been in a situation where somebody is accusing you of something or angry at you, that's a very threatening place to be in. So of course there's a lot of fear around that and discomfort around that, so she's an expression of, example of someone who is deeply wounded and is lashing out. If you've got all these other women who, instead of actually coming into some sense of balance and wholeness around this, just start retaliating, then it's going to be a mess, and I don't think that's where it's going, but I can understand the fear around that, and also it will, any change freaks people out. People change Facebook and it freaks people out, so this is a big change, so, any change is going to be scary because we don't know what that means. We don't know how to play by those rules, so what's it going to look like down the line? Are we going to have to give up power? Are we going to lose something if we allow the feminine to come into a place of power? Are we going to lose power? So there's that too.
It's interesting when you brought up being pushed away and judged, that the masculine energy has got a lot of fear around that. And, part of that I think comes from their own natural energy, because the masculine analyzes so much. And there's a lot of judgment that goes with that analyzing, but they're also from early on, a lot of times, placed with a lot of responsibility. And I think that when men realize that this shift can really help ease some of the burdens and the responsibilities that they've been carrying that are weighing them down. They feel a lot of responsibility where I've got to provide, I've been trained to take care of, done these sorts of things, and that providing, that's fine, but it's not a receiving space. So, as you said, they haven't really been trained or shown, I should say, how to receive. And I think that once they learn that it's okay to receive, which comes back to the sharing, because they're provider by nature, that that receiving factor is going to allow them so much more that they can do. It's going to be so much more empowering for them. And they won't feel those judgments. I think they feel those judgments because they, again, that they feel like I'm responsible for somebody else. They're always being told they're responsible for the female. They're responsible to take care of the female. And I think that some of that mentality has created some of this division. And when we get back to, hey, we're all responsible for ourselves no matter what we are, that a lot of that can be eased up.
Right. Well, and, right now I would speculate that, over the past, I guess since like the main thrust of the feminist movement began, men don't really know where to stand in some cases. As you said, like their part of their role is as a provider, and for example, women who won't let a man open a door for them, because, again, that's the weird swing of the pendulum, but to them, that's a slap in the face. Like, what? I'm trying to do something nice for you. I'm trying to take care of you. I'm doing what is normal masculine things to do. I'm trying to be a gentleman, and you're spitting in my face. Is basically how that is. So, how do you deal with that? Where do they stand? How do they act around us?
If we're not willing to receive a simple action like a male opening the door for us, how are they ever going to learn how to receive?
Right. So, and it's part of our nature is, so they don't really know what to do, and it is insulting. If you've given a gift to somebody and had them say, no, I don't want that, don't do that, then that's very hurtful when we do things like that. Whether we're, no matter how we say no, if we're saying no to a gift that's being presented to us, it's very hurtful, So, all of the things kind of that men were, what's that?
That's kind of a fine line between, you don't want to accept something that you really, really don't want, but then on the other hand, you have to be careful if you're just constantly throwing gifts back in people's faces. You're doing a lot of rejecting. And here again, we can't receive under the rejection.
Yeah, and there's a difference between like healthy boundaries and just constant rejection. Certainly there are things that people will offer to us where we say, no, thank you, that's very generous of you, but no, because it's just not appropriate. But if somebody just doing a simple gesture like that, in kindness, just receiving that. But one of the challenges was, or is, not wanting to be dependent. So wanting to come out of that sense of dependency. So therefore, the kickback, or the pushback, I should say, was against those things that were viewed as being oppressive or creating a dependency. That they must be bad, so just not receiving those or not allowing those. But, that's got to come into a place of balance, too, where, there's a difference between being dependent and being receptive. There's a difference between being dependent and being interdependent. And that's where we need to move into, because we are dependent on one another. Again, we can't have the feminine without the masculine.
Exactly. It's that ebb and flow, so to say, of the two of them. And I'm really glad you brought up that dependency factor, because that is a big thing that a lot of women have expressed. I don't want to be dependent on a man. that's fine. But you can still let them do nice gestures for you. I think some of that comes back to fear. Are you afraid that you, for example, can't say no in the sexual arena if he buys you dinner? That comes back to you not being confident in your own self, there. What's wrong? If he wants to buy you dinner, let him buy you dinner. It doesn't mean you have to give anything away for that,
right.
from yourself. So definitely an interesting space. Let's shift a little bit and let's talk about some of the ways now that we can heal this energy. You've expressed how we can identify it, ways that it's happening for us in our society and within ourselves. But what are some of the steps that maybe our listeners can take in their lives to start to create this balance? Or this healing thing?
Say that again?
Or this healing. Mode.
So there's certainly a lot of different options and opportunities out there for healing. One of the big things is being aware, really having some sense of understanding of what's really happening between us and how we're affected by the collective experiences that we've all had and the history of these experiences as they've affected us as a whole. Awareness is very powerful. Knowledge is very powerful. So through that awareness, it can help us come into a little bit more understanding and help us to come into more compassion with both ourselves and others around us, and shifts our perspective. So really understanding trauma, for example, and understanding how trauma affects us in very powerful and very profound ways. And that's something that I've focused a lot of time and energy really studying and learning about because I've recognized how much of an impact it has on people and the people that I work with. But beyond that, I think that coming together in community is very important, coming into healthy, heart-centered communities with other women, men in communities with other men, and as I said also, having times to come together and share. But, like women's circles, for example. Women's circles can have the potential to be a great opportunity for women to come together and connect. More than even I'm not even talking about getting together and doing therapy or doing any kind of counseling, but just building a relationship with one another and learning how to connect with each other in a way that is very deeply heart-centered and loving and compassionate, where we learn how to hold space for one another and feel safe with each other and also learn how to receive from one another. There's one practice that I learned a little while back through Christian Pankhurst, which I love, is learning how to receive compliments and giving compliments, where we all have this radar, like these self-defense come up, so somebody says, wow, you look really beautiful today, and we say, oh, thank you, or we just kind of deflect it, or no, this old thing kind of a response, where we deflect that. But learning how to connect with each other and give compliments in a way that kind of goes under the radar. So like an example of this would be if I were communicating a compliment to you, instead of giving your ego something to deflect, I'm going to reflect it in a way that is about me and how I feel in relationship to you. And you can't argue with how I feel, so it makes it easier for you to receive. So, for example, if I were to say, let me see. So, Jesse, when I'm in your presence, I really feel alive and beautiful and powerful, and I feel like there's just infinite possibility opening in front of me when I'm with you. Thank you for that.
Right, and there's nothing I can do but receive that glorious piece of expression there.
Right. It's
because there's no arguing with, like you said, there's no arguing with your feelings. So to personalize it like that, you could say, wow, you just are this incredible, person who exuberates this and this and this and this, which would leave me room to counteract and say, oh, no, not really, But the way you phrased it is really, I can't deny that because I can't contradict what you're feeling personally, and it's
exactly
true.
Exactly. So it just bypasses all of your defenses. So you have no choice but to receive, which is really powerful, and that's one of the practices I love doing. Because when you see people, especially people who are not good at receiving, you see somebody, they receive that, and it's so heart-opening and so powerful. And like I said, you can't argue with it because I'm telling you how I feel. You can't say, no, you don't feel that way.
Are you sure? Are you sure it's not more than
exactly.
that?
Yeah, so it just goes straight into the heart. So, just simple practices of connection and supporting each other is amazing. Learning how to really listen to each other and be present with one another is also very powerful. Really dealing with our own stuff, and being honest with ourselves about what our own stuff is, too. Because we all have experiences that affect us, and when we're not dealing with it, whether it's through therapy or through, going to a counselor or a healer, that's also a big part of it, is being, finding something that's going to help us heal, because we're all affected by these things.
You mentioned something that I think people have heard of, but I think they're a little lost with still, in a lot of ways, and that is holding space for each other. Can you elaborate on that a little bit and share with people, how do you hold space for somebody?
It's really just being very, very centered and present in yourself and in your body while you're in front of someone else or with someone else. So it's not sending anything to them or giving your energy to them. It's just being present with them. So you're fully there. It's been said one of the greatest gifts that you can give to someone else is your complete presence. And have you ever had the experience of being with someone who is just totally present and connected to you?
I have.
And what was that experience like for you?
It's powerful. It's powerful. And when two people are in that space together, it's almost mind-blowing, because it's almost like you create your own separate space. Time just seems to stop in some ways. And I know I shared this experience when I was face-to-face with a friend of mine several months ago, and we were both just very, very present in the moment, and there was no breeze in the place whatsoever, and my hair just moved on its own, it just moved back because of the energy current of being present. And I think that this is, I think that same like it in the world when you're fully present. And I think so many people, they think, oh, I'm present, I'm listening to you, but then they're texting away, or they're really thinking about the 20 things they got to do in their week coming up, or things like that, instead of really being present. And that's a practice for a lot of people.
Yeah, and you can tell when somebody's not fully present with you. It's I mean, our energy speaks to each other all the time, so you can tell when somebody's not there. or they kind of disconnect a little bit, or they're not giving you the full attention, or their mind's drifting off. We feel that all the time. And many of us are probably accustomed to just being in that energy of not having people with us. The other thing about holding space for someone, being in that powerful state of presence, I'm here, I'm with you, my focus is, I'm fully attentive to what's happening right here and right now, both with me as well as with you. But also in being present with them is being in a space of non-judgment. So not trying to, make whatever's happening with them wrong, or trying to fix anything that's happening with them, but just being fully with them wherever they are. So, for example, say you have somebody in front of you who's extremely angry. What do people usually want to do when they've got somebody in front of them who's angry?
They want to shut down, disappear, run.
They might. Or someone who is bawling their eyes out in grief. What do people want to do?
Sometimes they want to try to fix it. Sometimes they want to just escape the situation. Say, I don't want to deal with all these emotions.
So they try to fix it. They try to make it go away. They try to kind of pat down their feathers and say, oh, you're going to be fine. Everything's going to be fine. And they withdraw. But you have somebody who's in some type of an emotional state. They're really upset, angry, whatever. And I'm not talking about like violent rage bull. I'm talking about just angry. Having someone be able to be present with them and not check out and not judge them for where they're at or try to make them anything other than where they are now is extremely powerful. Like even just, if you've ever worked in like a customer service job and you have a customer coming up and they're really, really angry about something that happened, as a customer service person, if you just are present with them, listen to them, give them your full attention, and let them know that you're listening and you're there and you want to help support them, that's going to have a much better response than if you panic yourself, or you become reactive or become angry yourself and let them trigger you.
That is so true. I remember when I was managing a call center many years ago, and I would get some very irate people calling in because of various things. They had brought things on themselves, so there wasn't really, any contesting that. But at the same time, a lot of times they just needed to get stuff out. And I would sit there and I would just let them go. I would let them vent. I would let them get all their aggression out. I would let them express themselves. And I would just sit there and I would listen. And it would be amazing. Like these people would have, most of the customer service agents just off the wall reactive from it. So they would send them to me, and I would let them do this, and basically at the end I would say, there's really nothing I can do for you. Happily enough, there wasn't. If there was something I could do, I would do it. But the fact that somebody had actually listened to them and then very calmly taken the time to explain something to them was really what they needed. They really needed to get out that frustration that they were under. And so many times I think that escalates, particularly in like a customer service situation, because they're not being heard. I've many times been on the line with customer service people and they just cut me right off and weren't listening to what I was saying. There was no way they were going to resolve anything with me because they hadn't heard me. They hadn't paid attention.
Right.
They hadn't listened at all. So I think it really is a good thing, and I have found that oftentimes when we do that, the situation resolves itself, because a lot of times what would happen would be, not only had I not really done anything for them, they would be apologizing to me by the end of the call just because it was like, I'm so sorry I behaved that way. That's like, well, you needed to get it out,
Yeah.
And a lot of times that's what it is. We'll either come to our own resolution or we'll work through it just by being allowed to get it out.
Mhm. Well, and it creates a sense of safety. You know, if you've got somebody who's there, who's present with you, who's listening to you, and just accepting of you as you are right in this moment, you feel a lot safer, and that in and of itself is calming, you know, and reassuring. And safety is so vital for all of us in the healing process. We need to feel safe, you know, which is also why Circle can be so powerful.
And something that just came to mind, though, too, and I'm sure somewhere somebody's going to have this question in their mind, so I'm going to ask it for our listeners, and that is, so where do you draw the line between holding space and having somebody and they being receiving verbal abusiveness from people? Because a lot of times when people are venting and expressing things, they'll come up with some very harsh aspects in that process. And
well, yeah, you can be present and still hold boundaries.
Good.
You know, so boundaries are part of safety, and it's if you're being, you know, and again, if it's a matter of physical safety, this is, you know, you get away. But, you know, if there's like verbal abuses and things like that coming at you, then, you know, you can establish boundaries, and that can also create safety for that person. You know, so, for example, if you've got somebody shouting all of the, you know, cursing at you and shouting all these verbal abuses at you, and, you know, stay present and say something like, I don't know, you know, when you're cursing at me and when you're yelling at me, it's really hard for me to hear you, and I'd really like to be able to support you right now and hear what you have to say. So, you know, perhaps if you could have a seat, you know, if you could lower your voice so it's easier for me to hear you, things like that, sets boundaries and changes the tone. And, you know, if you're in an all-out assault, again, get away. It's not the appropriate time to be holding space for someone, simply put, you know. But, you know, if you're coming together, you know, again, talking about coming together as a community with the intention of healing and personal growth and spiritual connection and development, you know, you have to create a safe container for that to happen. And part of that is being present with one another. Part of that is being in a place of non-judgment. Part of that is holding, you know, having healthy boundaries for everyone in the group. And if there's somebody's, you know, you're not going to allow somebody to violate you. That's not at all what I'm saying, you know. So because that's not good for them or you. That's not healthy.
And I have found that sometimes if I really listen, I can get to the core of things. And I've found that oftentimes if I let somebody just go ahead and work their way through it initially until they've pretty much expressed everything and then come back and say, okay, this is what I'm hearing. However, in order to help you with this, I'm going to need this. And that means you not making these threats against me that you're going to leave me or whatever the case is in the process. I need you to share with me without making these attacks on me. And if you're willing to do that, then I'm more than happy to, you know, work with you and come to a resolution here. Because I found that sometimes if I try to interrupt somebody or, you know, if somebody gets interrupted when they're in that venting process, then it's they actually end up getting angrier and they don't hear anything during that time. And you brought up the thing, community, and this is where we come back. I'm so glad you wrapped that back around and tied that in, because this is where community can be important. There are definitely groups out there that are designed to allow people to go through these venting process and then express in whatever form, shape that they need and let it out and say, I'm angry, I'm this, I'm that. And to claim those emotions and to claim where they're being hurt, and sometimes it's easier to have that community to go to, so that then you can come back to your partner and do it, and in that sense you've got multiple people holding space, which can be very, very useful in that with it. So thank you for providing us that gift of sharing where those different aspects, because I think that's been a big thing. That term comes up off and on, and people just are like, I don't know how to do that. I don't know what that means. I'm lost with that in there.
Yeah, and, there's our individual work, and then there's our collective work, So, like, for example, for me, I have healers that I work with, such as Elizabeth. She's one of the healers that I go to, and she helps support me on the really deep aspects of traumatic experiences and things like that, as well as things going on just right now. So she plays a very powerful role in my personal healing process. And then having community, groups of women and groups of men and women that I can come together with and connect with in a safe and sacred space, and that's very powerful. So there's different aspects, and of course, so many wonderful healing modalities out there, and practices to also tie into that, and finding what speaks to you and really what helps you navigate is an important piece.
And I think that's the key, is knowing what helps you navigate better. And sometimes you just have to try some different things in different situations to get to that understanding of what actually does that for you. And sometimes it's one thing at one point and another thing at another point. And you brought up some great examples there, and I think that's exactly why groups like AA have been very powerful in helping people with their addictions, because they provide that group safety where people can just let it out and support them through it, and they offer that, and I think that's partly why that model has worked well over time, because they realize that value in that. Linda, we're kind of shifting around a little bit here on time, and I want to make sure that you have enough time to share some different facets of how you work with people, maybe anything you might have coming up, when your goddess events run. I know you just had one in the fall, so maybe sharing some of your happenings that you have for people to take advantage of.
Yeah. The Autumn Goddess Festival, of course, is every year in the fall. This coming year, it will be on September 26th. It's a full-day festival. We have live music. We have workshops all day long with some fabulous teachers and healers, and including, workshops, dance workshops, yoga workshops, workshops about, healing your body, your relationships with food, working with different types of energies. There's always a wide variety of really great workshops. And then we have vendors, and we have the Red Tent. I think I said music and dance performances. And it's a fundraiser for the Domestic Violence of Chester County, which is a charity that's very near and dear to my heart, and one that I love to support. So that's going to be September 26th. And so if you're in the area and want to come out for it, it's a wonderful day. And locally, I have a twice a month, women's group that just started. That's at Temenos Retreat Center, where we come together, and that is really a group about healing and building community, and some of the things that I talked about, and learning how to really connect more deeply with ourselves, working with the energies of self-love and self-care, and also that collective connection. So there's opportunities to share about different experiences and explore things, as well as some different activities. Some of them are more deeper work, and some of them are just fun. and what else? I'm also starting Heart Circles up again in January, which I'm really excited about. Those are really just a practice of, as we talked about, holding space for each other. That's kind of the core of a heart circle, is learning how to be present, connected with ourselves, and hold space for one another, and really work at being in our joy. So those are a couple of things that I have locally right now.
Go ahead.
And then, of course, my private work, I have a private healing practice where I do inner transformation coaching and also Reiki. And I really work with people in helping to heal the impact of emotional trauma and the stress and overwhelm of day-to-day life. And those sessions are available. I do via phone and Skype for people who are not local, and then I also have sessions available in Media, Pennsylvania and Malvern, Pennsylvania for in-person sessions.
Wonderful. I was going to ask you about the coaching sessions, and I was going to say maybe you can give people a little bit of idea when they come to you for a private session work. How would you proceed with somebody that comes to you for a private session?
Mm-hmm. So in a private session, it's working with what's happening with you and within your body in present time, and you can bring forward and share whatever you have that you know is of concern that you want to talk about or focus on. And I work with the chakra system, so I tune into your energy field and into your body and identify what chakras are most in need of attention. And once we identify what's going on, we kind of drill down into that chakra to get into some root imbalances. And then we'll go through practices to clear and lift the energy and heal the energy within that chakra. So, which can be any variety of things, but we'll work to get the energy cleared during the session. So you'll have an active experience during the session and experience the transformation and shift during that time together. And you'll also be given some practical life strategies to take with you outside of the session so that you can keep the energy moving and continue that work in your day-to-day life, because, of course, we're always interacting and moving and engaged with life, so we want to keep our body and our energy system as healthy as possible. So we give you some tools to help you do that.
Wonderful. I just want to take some time to say I really appreciated having you on the show and delving into this topic, because it can be a sensitive topic at times to delve into. And I just feel like you brought so much clarity and given a lot of insight to this whole shift that we're going through in society, culture, planetary-wise, as well as personally, from into more the goddess and the sacred feminine, and what this is really about, and to shed light really on this wounded chapter, this healing the wounded aspects within us, and holding space and the value of that in the healing process. So I just really appreciate what you've offered us on the show, and I want to thank you tremendously for the time that you've given to come and be on Activating Compassion Radio.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to have the opportunity to have this conversation and to share with you as well as the listeners. As you said, it's sometimes a difficult conversation, but it's a very important one. Speaking to what's happening in our world and in our lives right now, whether we recognize it or not. So thank you for providing the opportunity for me to share.
And do you have any kind of a closing statement that you want to make for people, if there's one kind of point that you really want them to walk away with from this?
I think the one thing that I really would like people to walk away with is the importance of compassion and connection and interconnection with one another. This journey isn't about male against female, us against them. This is about being part of a community and honoring and recognizing the wholeness within all of us, and that we need each other. We are part of one another. We need each other, and in order for us to come together, we need to have compassion for ourselves as well as for everyone around us. And, it's really important that we're gentle with ourselves and we're gentle with, other people that we come into contact with in the community.
Beautifully said. Beautifully. Linda, thank you so much for your time tonight and for being with us.
Thank you, Jessie. Thank you so much for having me on. And I look forward to connecting with you again soon.
And next week here on Activating Compassion Radio, I'm going to actually be running my own show on how we take things for granted, the art of giving thanks ahead of time, and what we can expect as we complete the series of Pluto-Uranus squares that have been going on for the last few years here. My books on relationships are out and released. You can check them out, as well as all of my products, services, videos that I run every month, different things that I have going on. I think even on my website there might be an interview that Linda did of me a while back, so you can definitely check that out as well. Again, those are on my website, Jessie and Nichols, George, the1.com. Still have a couple of events going on also that you can check out there on the website that are in the stand, are finishing up the 2014 tour, as well as one final event that's part of the tour that is happening on the winter solstice in Zion National Park in Utah. So those are going to be really, really incredible events. If you're interested in the full-day event, there's still time to sign up for that. If by chance you happen to miss the registration, talk with me and let me see if there's something I can do to get you into it for the full-day event in San Antonio. Definitely want to keep you posted on that. November special deal that I have running right now is participate in any full 1 or 2 day weekend event. There's 2 of those left before the end of the year, okay? If you participate in that before the end of the year, I will give you a free 1-hour coaching session. I mean, that more than pays for itself right there. And things. Don't forget that we have several shows here on Main Street Universe throughout the week. Sunday nights we have Darren Becerra, who's a reader at Madame Laveau in New Orleans, doing spiritual insights, and he does really have some interesting perspectives on things when you tune into his shows. Monday nights we have Randy Goldberg doing Vedic astrology. Tuesdays is Susan Weed, who shares her work in herbs and natural plants. And boy, she only does a 30-minute show, but I'll tell you, she packs it full of information. Wednesday nights we have Daniel and Janice on our flagship show, Main Street Universe, and sometimes they have guests on, sometimes they're doing readings, sometimes they're discussing topics. And Janice is actually going to be coming out with her own show on the network, which she'll be doing about once a month, and I'll be looking forward to seeing that come out. Thursdays and Saturdays, what we actually have now is a rotation of shows, and that's going to include, like I said, Janice, as well as Kevin Baird, who does Walking on the Sidewalk, works with his Horizon Oracle Journeys deck, a deck he created, which you can learn more about at templeofgaia.com. And also Woven Green with Jim and Ashley Cash has started their show, which is a once-a-month show in there as well. So you want to watch for that. They are just really incredibly beautiful people. And then, of course, Fridays we have Activating Compassion Radio. Hey, this is Jessie Ann Nichols George, and I want to thank you so much for being with me here today. And again, thank you to all of our listeners, not only on Blog Talk Radio, but those streaming live on 10, known as Pair Encounters Network, StreamFinder, and TalkStream Live, as well as those catching our podcasts at iTunes and TuneIn.com, and those catching the YouTube version of our show. I definitely look forward to seeing you back here next week as we delve more into Activating Compassion. Hey, don't forget, if you've enjoyed the show today, go ahead and share it with others. It's going to be available at the same link in our archives. And I'm going to go ahead and leave you with the song Yearning For, also known as Over and Over by Shumshai. Thank you so much. I look forward to seeing you again next week, right here on Activating Compassion Radio. Enjoy the rest of your weekend and have an absolutely amazing week.
And if I could see what makes me blind, I would soar to the edge of my mind, and to touch what seems unreal, just to show you the way that I feel. And we are in time with time, one with the season of change inside. And we are in tune with the tune, caught in a balance of sun and moon. Oh, deep inside, the light within, shining to show you it's here to begin. When all I have is all I need, I will soar to the edge of eternity. And we see in eye to eye, one within love to be for the divine. And we're walking hand in hand, caught in the balance of God and man. Over and over, life is your lover, learning to walk just a little bit slower, whispering secrets, but that you can't keep it. No turning back now, this time we reveal it. One to another, all will discover the essence within the most beautiful lover. Time is still turning, the love is still burning. Deep in your spirit, your heart still yearning for. Yearning for. Learning to walk just a little bit slower.